Welcome to a play-by-play review. I'm your host Henry, and there's no more surprise Nintendo Directs that are going to stop me now. I can finally talk about some warships here on this. I'd say it's first episode of Wacky Warships. That's I think the title I'm going to go with for this one, where I talk about some unique designs in old warship philosophy designs. And I am a big history nut. I actually majored in history in college, and I've always enjoyed military history, World War II, that kind of stuff. I obviously don't condone war. I don't like, killing people and, committing atrocities and all that bad stuff. But uh, to quote something from Ace Combat, war is bad, but planes are rad. In this case, the planes are actually boats. And I blame this entirely on being exposed to Top Gun when I was like 5. And I thought, watching Top Gun when I was a kid, I thought the planes were awesome. Planes Go Noom, and I'm now much older, and I still think Planes Go Noom is really, really cool. Um, and so that is extended to a lot of other things. I think this series that I kind of want to do will be more than just boats, since as much as there are plenty of warships in existence, trying to find like niche, wacky stuff that I can talk about for a while that isn't just the standard stuff isn't as easy as planks or tanes. Wow, that was a good tanks or planes. My goodness. Um, but no, since warships are obviously a lot bigger and a lot more cost intensive than a plane or a tank. Designing and experimenting with them is a lot more difficult. Even like tanks are probably the easiest, I'd say, because even planes, while they're similar in size, you still have to fly them, and there is the ever-present threat of gravity, which can make plane development difficult. For warships, it's both the just the massive scale of warships and also the fact that they exist in water, and something goes wrong, like a leak springs or something like that, and that it's going to be a big problem because the ship might just sink, and then it's just your $5 billion investment's going to be sitting at the bottom of the ocean or however much it costs. Anyways, I have no idea how long this episode is going to be. I have three specific ships I'm going to be talking about, or classes of ships, I should say, I'm going to be talking about in this episode. I don't know how long it's going to go. This is entirely new for me for this channel, but I intend to, just do what I've been doing so far on play-by-play review, talking about what I like. So for a little bit of context here, for those who are not as hyperfixated on naval history and warship design and all that. In between wars, and really kind of 1900 onward, when steel ships with rifled guns shooting shells became the norm, essentially. So think battleships, essentially. Basically from that until the end of World War II and start of the Cold War, where doctrinal philosophies shifted from surface ships to carriers, missile ships, and submarines. There is this period of 40 odd years, I want to say, where the battleship was sort of the peak design philosophy, and big guns on big ships were kind of the ideal. Obviously, nations couldn't just build big ships with big guns, because A, it's really expensive, B, it's very one-dimensional. So fleets of varying different sizes form, and various different types of ships. The three main types of surface ships that you'd see in more kind of World War One, more interwar and World War II, are destroyers, cruisers, and battleships. And give me one sec while I take a drink of water, because my throat is once again pretty scratchy. But anyway, destroyers are the smallest. Usually they have I won't get into specifics of like all the roles in that, but the idea of a destroyer is that it has small-ish guns, relatively so, average around would be the 5-inch or 127 millimeter size guns. So that's the diameter of the shell they fire, diameter of the barrel inside of the gun. And destroyers also tend to have torpedo racks and a variety of other things. As World War II would go on, a lot of destroyers would get fitted with anti-submarine warfare capabilities, especially United States destroyers, the Fletcher class being the peak example of that. Anyway, cruisers are sort of a middle ground. They're bigger. There's sort of two subsections, I'd say, with the heavy cruisers and light cruisers. And that actually has basically nothing to do with their weight. It has has to do with their gun caliber. So light cruisers usually more around the 6-inch size. So 6-inch or 152 millimeters, while heavy cruisers are 8-inch or 203 millimeters in size for their guns. And then, like, not every single light and heavy cruiser or even destroyer in existence follows this size exactly, but that's sort of the general guidelines for what historians have classified, and even people like designers at the time classified as destroyers and cruisers. Battleships, meanwhile, are just bigger, better armored, and with much bigger guns. Usually the philosophy was that they are big, they're slow, but they pack an absolute punch. They are a floating fortress of weaponry. For a long while, really since kind of the introduction of HMS Dreadnought and the Dreadnought philosophy, battleships were the ruler of the waves. Like, it was, if you were a major nation, like you wanted to be a major naval power, you needed to build a battleship. Like, it was the thing to flex your naval superiority. And battleships for a while were, they basically ruled the waves until the invention of the plane, essentially. When people figured out that planes are actually really, really good at taking down warships. But that philosophy didn't really become widely accepted until World War II happened, and various battles such as Midway and the Hunt for the Bismarck. Anyways, one last major historical context that I want to provide here is on a couple of treaties that happened in the interwar period. So in between World War I and World War II. I'm not going to go into specifics because I don't even know all the specifics about them, but I know the gist of like what they're attempting to do. So there's the Washington Naval Treaty, and then later on the two London Naval Treaties, with the Washington Naval Treaty being the big one, and then the London ones about a decade later in the 30s, Washington Naval Treaty in the early 20s, London Naval Treaty in the 30s, were basically just addendums to that as tensions grew higher in the global sphere as the world started to march towards World War II. Anyway, the Washington Naval Treaty was signed after the war by the Allied powers, with a lot of them, mostly all the Allied naval powers, to basically limit the size of capital ships. So like anything above heavy cruisers, essentially, and even including cruisers to an extent. And so what concerns this episode more is how they focus on battleships and between the what they call the 5-power treaty. So the United States, Great Britain, France, Italy, and Japan. Since at this point Japan was still considered a part of the Allies, they hadn't started their aggression into Manchuria and China as a whole, which then led to them getting embargoed by the U.S. and everything that happened there. At this point, Japan was still considered an ally of the Allies, I guess. Yeah. But anyway, the gist of this is that the 5 powers, they agree that battleships and aircraft carriers, they can't exceed a certain tonnage, so they can't be too big. They can't have a certain gun caliber or above. Basically, no big guns, no big ships. Just trying to limit things because they're at this point they're in the 20s. The Great War has ended, which was the worst war in human history, and they're like, we don't want to have another one. We don't want to give why do we need to build big ships if we're not going to, you know, have another war? Because we're obviously not going to have another war. We just had a war that killed like 40 million people or whatever it was. We don't want another one of that, so there's no need to build big ships. So, yeah, with that context out of the way, basically the gist of it is that the naval treaty and at the like in the interwar period, battleships are still big, but they're at this point limited. So the finally that I can actually get to the ships that I want to talk about. The first ship that I want, or first ship class I want to talk about, and all three of these are going to be British designs, is the Nelson class. So, a caveat of this treaty was that so the limit was set on battleship gun caliber of 14 inches or 356 millimeters. This was not something. This was basically like any ships built during or after the treaty cannot exceed this gun caliber. The British had been probably the premier constructor of battleships and battle cruisers, which is a sort of mix between, basically the quick side note, battle cruisers are more of a World War I philosophy where battleships were really, really slow. Battle cruisers are significantly less armored, but they are the size of battleships. They have the gun caliber of battleships, but more the speed of cruisers. They were very prevalent in World War I, but kind of lost their steam as World War II came around when technology advanced to the point where nations could just develop battleships that could match the speed of cruisers. So there was no real point to make a battle cruiser because at that point you could just make a battleship that would match it in speed and still have the armor. Anyways, one thing that the British were very, very proud of and constructed a ton of was their 15-inch caliber guns. The 381 millimeter guns that they made for basically all of their capital ships during World War I and during the interwar period. It was like all of their battle cruisers, like modern for the time, battle cruisers, all of their battleships, the Queen Elizabeth class, which was one of their more famous ones, the HMS Warspite, which holds the naval record for longest ship-to-ship hit for a gun. It's like 21 miles or some crazy stat like that. That is a 15-inch gun that the British made. The HMS Hood, which is infamous for getting sunk like 5 minutes into the battle with the Bismarck during World War II. That had 15-inch guns on it. So basically the British, they loved their 15-inch gun design. It was very successful, and they put it on basically everything. So with the treaty limiting this, however, there was an ability to create an exception to this, kind of known informally as the Big Seven. So between England, the United States, and Japan, 7 ships in total between the three were allowed to equip 16-inch guns, 406 millimeters. The United States would have 3 ships, the Colorado class, so the Colorado, Maryland, and West Virginia. The Japanese Navy would have 2, the Nagato class, Nagato and Mutsu. And then the British would have the Nelson class, Nelson and Rodney. Nelson and Rodney are the only ships ever built by the British Navy to house 16-inch guns. Give me one more second for another sip of water. And one of the main reasons I want to talk about the Nelson class is that they look really weird. Because they are a quote-unquote treaty battleship, since they were, it was built while they were allowed to house 16-inch guns, they still had to meet the tonnage requirement for the treaty. Basically, they didn't have to be super big and well armored to, fit inside the limits of the treaty. How the British were able to work around this in the sense of like they were just able to construct this ship in the first place was, okay, so for those of you who may know what a battleship looks like or like don't know the specific, like what a Nelson looks like what the Nelson and Rodney looks like, if you picture a battleship in your head, you're probably thinking something similar to the Iowa class, since like the Missouri is the one that gets shown in all the movies, where it's like, it's a big ship, kind of long, kind of a pike nose. It's got 2 turrets in the front, the superstructure where the bridge and all the important bits are, and then another turret at the back. That's pretty standard for a battleship design. A lot of battleships, as designs got better and more streamlined, would usually have the 3 or 4 turrets, 8 or 9 guns. So they would have, if it's 4 turrets, it's usually if it's 4 turrets, it's usually 8 guns, 2 in the front, 2 in the back for an even split. Or if you have 9 guns, it's triple turrets, like the Iowa class, where it's 3 guns. No, 6 guns in the front, 3 in the back. So 2 turrets in the front, 1 in the back. And that's like a standard battleship philosophy that's kind of was a thing. The Nelson class had 9 16-inch guns. And you would think that, they would go 2 in the front, 1 in the back, where it's the typical one. They did not do this. Instead, they went all 3 in the front. And you might be asking yourself, how are they able to fire all 9 of these guns going forward at once? Because you would probably want, facing the ship dead ahead, to have the guns all fire at once, directly ahead. The answer is that they don't. So basically, the front half of the ship is basically all deck or gun placements. The 3 guns are on the deck, the first one. The middle one is raised up so it can fire over the front turret. That's called super firing. So the first and second turrets are super firing, so you can fire 6 rounds going forward. The third turret is rested on the deck like the first turret, directly behind the third one. So if it's pointing directly forward, and if it were to shoot, it would basically shoot directly into the back of the second turret, which is, it's an interesting design. So one benefit kind of this is that the third turret can swivel back and forth. So like, say you are the Nelson, essentially. Like, you're looking forward, you got all 9 of your guns pointed forward. Like, if you're looking directly ahead of you, you can only fire 6 guns. But if you're like swivel 20 degrees to the left, you could probably fire all 9 of them. And then you could also swivel 20 degrees to the right and also fire 9 of your guns. So it's not like the third turret is completely out of the picture. It's just, it's a very, very, I don't think there's another battleship class or ship class in general that has this specific design. Well, that's not entirely true. I know there's a Japanese cruiser class that has something similar, but they also have extra turrets in the back, and they're also smaller guns. I'm pretty sure this is the only constructed battleship class that has this specific layout of turrets. I know the French do have similar designs where they have the Richelieu and the Dunkirk class. They have 2 quad turrets where they're super firing, but they don't have a third turret behind them as well. So they have 8 guns. All of them can fire forward in 2 turrets. Anyways, the rest of the Nelson class is, again, a little odd, where the superstructure is kind of more in the back half of the ship instead of in the middle. And then they also have an array of secondary batteries, like just at the rear. So it's overall a ship design that's very front heavy in its armaments. I think it also has like a couple underground or underwater torpedo launchers. I could be wrong, but I think they do. But overall, it's such a unique ship where it looks, in my opinion, pretty ugly. And I think I know a lot of people, like, historically have agreed that the Nelson looks pretty ugly. But it had a decent service life. Like the Rodney specifically was involved in the hunt for the Bismarck. It was in the final chase down with the Rodney, I think the King George V, which I will actually get to in a moment. That's going to be the next one I talk about because that's got some interesting designs as well. The Rodney, the KGV, and then a couple of cruisers. But the Rodney was there to pummel the Bismarck to its final resting place. So it's not like they were bad. Like, it's not like they were horrible and, were just a complete waste of space. But it's like, for me that likes learning about like military history and like how these weapons of war were designed, and like I don't like war and everything that comes with it, But I do find it fascinating to see like how like governments and technology institutes and all that, like their job is to create ideally this like perfect weapon of war or something like that. Like this, their job is to make in this case a ship that houses the biggest guns ever mounted on a British battleship, and like you got to make something that is effective in wartime, and it's in wartime it's literally life or death. And so like seeing like just wondering what goes through the thought process of like how they come up with something like the Nelson class is fascinating to me. And I get it's like most of the reason why it's designed this way is due to the treaty limitations. And I understand that. Yeah, it's what they had to work with. It's just still like such an odd look for a ship, to like have all three of the turrets in front. One of them you eliminate being able to shoot directly forward, and it's again it's just odd to me. But it's still it's fascinating to see like how this sort of design philosophy was so like so quick as well. Like you see it once and you never see it again. Anyways, I think that's really all I can say about the Nelson class, because it's really the most interesting thing about it is how it looks, and like that it's one of the big seven, and it's just such a unique looking ship. Next up though is I'd say slightly less unique, as I take another sip of water here real quick. So it's slightly less unique overall, but still got its interesting quirks, to say the least. So as I alluded to before, the King George V battleship, or the King George V class of battleships, they were the second to last class of battleships built technically. So the HMS Vanguard was something that was built after the war, but this is that was one ship. The KGV class, which was 5 ships, I believe, they were built basically during the war, and this was kind of after all the treaties kind of got abandoned, since it was wartime at that point, and they're like, we're at war, we don't need to limit ourselves to building ships, when like Japan basically broke the treaty almost immediately, and they just started building ships as big as they could. Same with Germany. They just secretly built up their own navy as well. But the King George V class was something where I'm still not entirely sure why the British went the way they did for this design philosophy. So as I said earlier, the British were known for their 15-inch guns on their battleships. They had a lot of them. They had a lot of their old ships were mounted with them. And so even if the Nelson had 16-inch guns because it was allowed to, but so I think treaty-wise they were still limited. But I think at this point, because it was 1939 when they started getting laid down, and by this point the war was, I don't know if officially started. I don't think it was officially started by this point, but or at least England wasn't officially involved. But it was getting to the point where they could probably ignore the treaty. Britain still decided to go with 14-inch guns, or 356 millimeter guns, which they just never used before on like anything, at least not that I can remember. But they were dead set on using 14-inch guns here instead of going 15-inch. And they wanted to do 12 14-inch guns in 3 turrets, and 3 quadruple turrets, which already is a bit odd because quadruple turrets were very rare. The French were the only ones to actually use them like in produced ships, like ships that got past the design phase. The British had never done it before on like a proper turreted main battery. So that it was an odd choice already. The other parts of the KGV class were that they had decent armor, better armor than the Nelson. The Nelson had really bad armor. Better armor, better speed, but pretty thick overall. Like they weren't very, very sleek. But yeah, the main point is that, or the main thing that I find interesting is that Well, the the guns, the turrets weren't very good at anything. Um, and so that they tried to do it in the classic ABY or ABX, I forget. The two turrets in the front, one turret in the back. This time four instead of three. They quickly ran into the problem of the second turret in the front, so the higher back turret, the super firing turret. Just they couldn't fit it. They didn't have enough space. So instead, they decided to make a double turret to replace it. So, and that was the finished design. So the King George V class has 10 guns in a 4, 2, and 4 layout, which is very unique and very odd to look at. I'm not a fan of it at all. I'm trying to be my best to like not just rag on this, but like I really do not look like the look of the King George V class. I think just the uneven amount of guns and also just the quad turrets look really bad. It just looks not good and like not like streamlined. It looks like a stopgap almost to me. Like obviously it's not. It's definitely not a stopgap. It was the final product, but it looks so weird. And like for historically a ship class that is like it's usually pretty streamlined once you get past the like early like 1900s designs where like no one really knew what they were doing when they were making battleships. Um, it's so weird to see a ship that's like just so not streamlined or like not even in its layout. And oh, they weren't bad ships. I'll say they weren't bad ships at all. One of them, the Prince of Wales, the second ship in the class, was lost to Japanese aircraft over in the Indian Ocean. But that was the only loss they suffered of those ships. But it's still just like, for me, it's such an like the entire design process of it of like you're at the point where I don't know why they just didn't go back to 15-inch guns because I'd assume they had spare guns left over or had a better ability to produce them. They probably could have also just recycled them from some older ships. There was also like there were plans to convert at least one of them into having 9 15-inch guns. I know like for me who plays World Warships and also Azure Lane, which Azure Lane took the collab from World Warships, but Wouse has the that design that I think it was mostly just on paper design as the HMS Monarch, which again that's not a real ship, but it's the hypothetical design of like what if the King George V class had the 9 15-inch guns instead of the 10 14-inch guns. And it looks a lot better. I'll just say that it definitely looks a lot better, just like visually. But it's such an like I still just don't understand like why they went for such an like almost risky design where it's and risky and unproven design, I'd say, where they're using a gun caliber that they're not super familiar with and a turret design they're definitely not familiar with that had many design or many is not a good grammatical way of phrasing it. A lot of engineering issues and technical issues. Like it would just wouldn't work at the time. And so just having that risk on your modern battleship just perplexes me. And a lot of British ship designs, I feel like in World War II, perplex me, I'd say. Like their carriers are pretty good. They were smart in making armored carriers, like armored flight decks for their carriers, because since they didn't have nearly as much room to operate in like the English Channel and the North Sea, and even the Atlantic Ocean, compared to like U.S. and Japanese carriers, which had the entire Pacific Ocean to operate in. British carrier design was actually pretty smart. It's their battleship design and their I don't really know what's going on there. Yeah, it perplexes me. And so moving kind of away from the battleships in a sense. Well, I'm not talking about a battleship anymore, but I'm talking about something with battleship caliber guns. So the last ship class I'm going to be talking about is the Erebus class Monitor ship. So the HMS Erebus and HMS Terror are some of the more incredibly unique and really, I don't want to use the word dumb, but I kind of want to use the word dumb to describe them. So a battle monitor is not a ship class that you would see normally when talking about history. So the monitor, my favorite little thing to talk about or quote of it is actually the Wikipedia summary of it. So a monitor, this is quoting Wikipedia here. A monitor is a relatively small warship that is neither fast nor strongly armored, but carries disproportionately large guns. So the monitor philosophy actually kind of comes from the USS Monitor, like one of the first ever ironclads, which was used during the American Civil War. It kind of evolved into this idea of basically making a hunk of metal that can barely move, but you stick a battleship caliber gun on it. That's what the Erebus and Terror are. They're the same class of ships, so the same exact ship, basically, save for the name. So the Erebus is, I want to say, about as long as like a cruiser, like at best. It has one turret and one turret only with two 15-inch guns. It is, I don't know what the idea was when they were making this, because it does not go fast. It does not take any hits. It has one gun that is way too big for it, and that's it. Like, its top speed is 12 knots or 14 miles an hour. Like, that is not fast. And like, if you're having a ship that isn't fast at like, and so it was designed at the end of World War One, so it's not like philosophy. Like, they were still stuck in World War One philosophy of like slower ship, more, or basically the ships as a whole were slower. So it's there, but like, you would think with a slower ship with a battleship caliber gun, something that can pack a major punch, it would have at least some protection, but it doesn't. Like, it just doesn't. In terms of gunnery protection, I'd say I should specify. Like, it's not a ship that is designed for ship to ship combat, I would say. And I get that, and I think I'm harsh on it because I'm thinking of it more as a ship to ship combat type rather than a multi-role type of platform where it's like you could park this thing like off of a shore and just shell with shore batteries with battleship guns. But still, it's just like, if you're gonna build something with a battleship caliber gun, just make a battleship. Like, it's so weird to me that the British designers will look at this thing, see it like it's the size of a cruiser, does not have the armor or the speed of a cruiser, and has one main gun with like a couple smaller secondary armaments and AA guns, and think this is a good idea. Like, this is something we should invest, I don't know, like £1 million in, or however much it costs. I don't know. But like, I just don't understand why. And it's so confusing. Like, just build a battleship. You have the guns for it. Just build a battleship. Put it on the King George V class. Like, put it on. I know it comes like 20 years after this is built, but like, it's so odd. Like, it's just such a unique ship that that you don't ever see talked about, because it's just not intimidating, to be honest. Like, I don't want to just harp on the Erebus and the Terror, but like, it's not a good design philosophy, in my opinion, of just having basically just a floating gun platform. And it's I don't really know what else I can say about it. It's just such a weird, like, you build a ship that's like a third of the size of a battleship with one of its guns and none of its armor or speed. Like, I don't get like why that's a good idea. Just build something more conventional. Yeah. Anyway, this is definitely a short episode. I've been kind of out of it this week, and I had no idea how long this was gonna go. But honestly, you know what? Short episodes are fine. I want to do shorter episodes rather than longer episodes. I don't want to do like 4 hour episodes, or well, I did like a 3 hour, like a couple 3 hour episodes to start. And at like a 30-40 minute episode, sure, why not? This is definitely more of a rambling, less of a plan going into this, but it was like, yeah, these are a couple ships that I think are kind of neat, and I kind of want to talk about a little bit. I know I have one other like definitive Wacky Warships episode that I have like, oh, I want to do this. This will be fun, and that's going to be on some aviation or hybrid ships, which are a sneak preview for that. It's going to be the Issei class battleship, which got retrofitted into a hybrid battleship, where basically the rear of it got transformed into a flight deck. The Tone, and I think the Chikuma as well, but the Tone class, which is similar, but it's a cruiser and it has the flight deck on the back. The I-400 class submarines, which are submarines with the ability to launch planes, and also the French cruiser submarine Surcouf. I don't know how you exactly pronounce it, but I think it's Surcouf. Surcouf. I don't know. It's Soucourf, I think is how it's spelled. But that's also a submarine that can launch planes and also has a turret with heavy cruiser caliber guns, which is absolutely wild to me that you put those kind of guns on a submarine. Like, it is designed to go underwater. You can't shoot the guns underwater. But like, I get it, so you can surface and then shoot the guns, but it's still like, it's absolutely crazy to me. Anyway, I'm kind of getting ahead of, spoiling episode 2 of Wacky Warships, but yeah, that's what I want to talk about next episode, where it's like, dang, these people were like, the Japanese especially were desperate to get some planes in the air after Midway. Like, I know that the Tone class was built, or I think like those hybrids were built before Midway and all that, but like, still, it's crazy. Other stuff, I have perplexing planes in my mind for like, if I want to do a plane version of this. I don't have a tank version yet, like a witty, like like title for the like tanks, but like, I can definitely find a lot more planes and tanks to talk about. I mean, I could go with the classics like the Mouse, or which is, for those who don't know, the Mouse is the largest largest and heaviest tank ever built. There's technically one. There are two built. Technically, one survives. It's more the hull of one and the turret of the other. It survives in a tank museum over in Moscow. Yeah, so that's a fun one. Yeah, I'm blanking on like, what's a goofy tank to talk about. I mean, I could talk about the Tog, that hot dog looking tank that the British made, or like the M3 Lee. I could talk about something like that, or planes. I mean, I could talk about the Flying Flapjack. That thing's hilarious. But it's just like, this is a series that I kind of want to do. I could just ramble on for like 30-40 minutes on, just odd design choices that military designers make, usually during the interwar period, where it's like, especially for tank designs, people had no clue what they were doing when they were making tanks in the interwar period, because it was like, World War I happens, and British made their early tanks, which are basically just trapezoids of doom, and then after that, it was like the French kind of made with the Renault FT. It was kind of the first like I guess modern tank, but it was like, you look at it and it's like, yeah, I can see this is where the tank came from. Like, the idea of a tank came from, where it's like, it's got treads on the side, it's got a hull, it's got a turret that can rotate all the way around with a gun sticking out of it. And the gun is like fairly large. Like, that is a tank. The Mark IV, the Trapezoid of Doom, I wouldn't really call it a tank, but it was like the first one ever made, so it's whatever. But yeah, no, it's like, I might have to do like a whole thing on interwar tanks, because like, oh my god, there's some crazy ones where it's like, I get these people had no idea, like, they had no reference basically, and like no way to like prove it in wartime, but it's still like just looking back on it. I mean, look at the Bob Semple tank down in what is it, New Zealand, I think, or whatever. Like, what are we doing? Why are we investing this money into this? But anyway, that's for later, some point later. My next episode will be the preview, or not preview, the review, recap of NFL Week 3, which is going on as I record this, which should be good. This Week 3 was absolutely bonkers. But that's going to be for Tuesday because not all the games are done, and I want to get some time to summarize my thoughts. After that, to be honest, I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do next, like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, whenever I make my non-recap episode. I might do my Fire Emblem recap or like summary story of the summary of Three Houses because Fortune's Weave got announced. I might do that. Might do something else. We shall see. But yeah, this last like 5 minutes or so was very rambly. I apologize, but yeah, thank you very much for listening. This is a bit of a deviation from my usual theme so far, but yeah, that's kind of what you get with me. I like to talk about what I like. So tune in next time for the NFL recap. Thank you for listening, and I hope you tune in again.